I read 25 books in June. Let's go over them and just the star rating. Super quick, super fast, super dirty. Let's do it. I read fantasy novella A Mouthful of Dust by Nhi Vo and I gave it a 3.75. I read historical romance A Rare Find by Joanna Lowell and I gave it a 3-star. I read the romantasy Tusk Love by Thea Guanzin and I gave it 4.75 stars. I read sci-fi novella Automatic Noodle by Anna Lee Newitz and I gave it 5 stars. I read Solomon Dark by Eric S. Gray and I gave it 4 stars. I read Small Town Romance Let's Give 'em Pumpkin to Talk About by Isabel Pop and I gave it 3.75 stars. I read the fantasy novel Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab and I gave it 5 stars. I read the romance A Lot Like Adios by Alexis Daria and I gave it 4 stars. I read A Forbidden Alchemy by Stacey McEwen and I gave it 3.75 stars. I read A Song of Legends Lost by N.H. Allende and I gave it 4.5 stars. I read dystopian fantasy Flight of the Fallen by Hannah Lee and I gave it 4.5 stars. I read YA fantasy A Treachery of Swans by A.B. Pornek and I gave it 3 stars. I read the eco-horror novella A Girl in the Creek by Wendy N. Wagner and I gave it 5 stars. I read horror novel My Ex, The Antichrist by Craig DeLuey and I gave it 3 stars. I read the summertime romance Only Lovers in the Building by Nadine Gonzalez and I gave it 3 stars. I read the audiobook Along Came Amor by Alexis Daria and I gave it 4 stars. I read the sports romance Double Hit by Katie Steele and I gave it 4.5 stars. I read YA horror If We Survive This by Raquel Marie and I gave it 4.5 stars. I read the thriller Whispers of the Lake by Shanora Williams and I gave it 4.5 stars. I read the romance novella Nevermore by Jade Hernandez and I gave it 5 stars. I read the fantasy novel Evocation by S.T. Gibson and I gave it 4 stars. I read the romantasy Terror at the Gates and I gave it 3.75 stars. I read fantasy novella Cinderhouse by Freya Marsk and I gave it 5 stars. I read the romance novella Patron Saint of Pendejas by Hunt Girl Nix and I gave it 5 stars. I did a reread of the Dark Academia novel A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed and I increased my rating from 4 to 5 stars.